Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about the 10 things that you need to know before buying a Chanel bag. I have been a huge fan of Chanel for many years now, and I know a fair bit about the brand, not so much the history, just about kind of buying practices and what to look out for. I'm lucky enough to have a few Chanel bags, and there are definitely things that you pick up along the way. And when I first started out like looking at Chanel bags, I found it all so confusing, and now it's kind of just second nature. But I realized just through the course of filming these videos that a lot of people just don't know some of, I don't even want to say the basics, but some of the detail about buying a Chanel bag. So I thought I would make this video on all the things that I think you should know before making your decision about whether to buy one or what type of Chanel bag to buy. So I hope you guys enjoy this and find it useful, and let's get going. The first thing you should know is about the different types of material. So the two most common leathers are Caviar and Lambskin, but even within those there can be huge variations. So just because you bought a vintage lambskin bag 20 years ago and it's completely indestructible doesn't mean that the same will be true today. So I have the example here of the very first Chanel bag that I ever bought. I got this pre-loved and it has been through the walls. It is lambskin. It's been caught in bus stores, it's been rained upon, everything has happened to this bag, and I think it still looks great. It's very shiny, it's very scratch proof, it's just incredible. But I compare that to a Chanel bag, also in lambskin, that I got about 2 years ago, I guess, and this is much more delicate and I have to be much more careful with it. So just be aware that just because you're buying the same leather doesn't mean that you're going to get the exact same product. Because they're made in batches, they do just seem to really vary, and this is the same for caviar as well. So I've heard stories of really dull caviar, overly shiny, very delicate caviar. So just make sure that when you're going in to buy the bag, you inspect the leather, you ask questions, and you just have a feel of it to make sure that you know what you're buying. The second thing to know is about caviar leather, and caviar leather absolutely has the reputation as being the tough material, and for good reason. If you want a daily bag, I would always say go for caviar leather. It is much more carefree. Lambskin, you will have to baby it. It is more suitable for an occasional use bag. If you want something that you're not going to worry about, or if you want something for daily use, then I would absolutely say caviar. However, that doesn't mean that caviar is totally indestructible. I would avoid getting it really wet, you know, just an occasional light shower of rain will be fine, but torrential downpour, the leather will soften and it can get a little bit misshapen. And also over time you will begin to see wear around the flap corners and possibly around the bottom as well. This will be true of lambskin, and you know, the difference between lambskin and caviar will be huge. Lambskin will begin to wear much more quickly, but over time you will be able to see it with caviar as well. So it's still very important to take care of your caviar bag. If, however, you have your heart set on a lambskin bag, and I can completely understand why, because it is a beautiful material. Apparently Karl Lagerfeld himself actually prefers the lambskin, which is why a lot of Chanel seasonal colours will only be available in the lambskin and not in the caviar. It's definitely a very luxurious material, but you do have to be careful with it. So I would always say, if it's going to be your only Chanel bag, or if it's going to be a daily one, not to go for lambskin, because it will show wear very quickly, notably around the flap area and also around the corners, like the caviar bags as well. However, if you just want it more as an occasional use bag, or if you're okay with really babying it, then it can make for a lovely choice. Just make sure to keep it out of rain, that's really important. Keep it stuffed when you're not using it, and also use the buffing cloth. So with every Chanel bag they give you a very soft buffing cloth, and that will enable you to buff the leather to, one, keep it shiny, but also if you do get any scratches on it, you can lightly buff out the scratch and it will kind of spring back. So really deep ones you might not be able to get rid of completely, but I've done it with really light ones and the leather looks as good as new. My fourth point is about the different batches and how to tell if you're getting a good one or a bad one. So the first thing I would always say is just have a look and feel of the bag that you're interested in, because even if you have no knowledge of Chanel bags, something may well look or feel off. So if the leather is overly matte or weirdly shiny, or if it's lambskin and you see some creases in the leather, that's an automatic immediate sign. If you're not so confident though, and in general I would recommend this step anyway, I would always say to do your research. So the Purse Forum is a great place to go for any brand knowledge, particularly in the Chanel forum. There are a lot of very knowledgeable ladies who discuss upcoming collections, and if there is something wrong with a batch of leather, they will usually be talking about it and reporting on it. So I remember a few years ago there was a So Black line of bags that Chanel released, and there was a lot of creasing in the leather. So everyone was talking about it, people were talking about fixes and whether to return them. So if there is a really obvious issue, then that is a great place to look, because they will be talking about it. My fifth point is about waiting lists and how to score the Chanel bag of your dreams if it's quite difficult to get. So ladies that live in the US, correct me if I'm wrong because I've never bought a bag in the US before, but as far as I'm aware, Chanel do have waiting lists in the US. So if there is something particular that you want, you can get added to the waiting list and they will phone you if it comes in stock. In the UK, this is not the case, so you cannot get added to any waiting lists. You're pretty much just at the mercy of the sales associates, and sometimes they do phone you and sometimes they don't. So a very lovely sales associate did phone me when my Chanel boy came in. However, with my iridescent flap, which is right there, they didn't phone me, and I asked to be contacted if anything came in, and nothing, and it was only because I kept phoning around that I stumbled across that one. So just be aware that you are kind of at their mercy, and often it operates on a first come first serve basis. So if they have it in stock and they have a customer wanting to buy it, they will often just sell it to that person there. So be persistent and just be aware that you have to be ready to pounce if you're after like that really difficult to find item. In terms of the best time to phone if you are on a hunt for a particular bag, I would always say early morning is best. I like about 10:30 a.m. They have already opened and they've already processed their deliveries for the day, but they're not so crazy busy as they are later on in the day. In terms of the best days, I would say Tuesday and Wednesday, and also Friday are my favorites. Tuesday and Wednesday, they are restocking from the weekend. Mondays, sometimes they don't always get deliveries, so Tuesday and Wednesday seem to be safer bets, and also Friday when they are restocking for the weekend. So that isn't completely foolproof, but that just comes from a few years experience of doing it and also quizzing sales associates when I can about the best times. So around 10:30 is always a good shout, and Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday are my favourite days to phone. My seventh point is about the Chanel Classic Flap and what qualifies a classic flap as such, which is the presence of a double flap. So of all the Chanel bags I own, I actually only have two classic flaps, and that is this bag and also my Chanel Jumbo. So a few years ago they used to do the Jumbo and I think the maxi size as well without the double flap. However, as of a few years ago they made the switch to having all the classic flaps with the double flap. So that is what makes the difference now, and that's also why the Chanel minis are not considered classic flaps. So they may look the same, but because there is no double flap, you can see it just has the single there. The Chanel mini is not counted as a classic flap, whereas this one is. So there is a substantial price difference between the two, and that is why this is considered a classic flap and this is not. In terms of the classic flap, there are 4 sizes in total. I don't have the largest one here because that is the maxi. I used to own one, but I sold it in favour of the jumbo instead, which is the one I have here. This is generally the more popular of the 2 sizes, but if you do want that extra space, then the maxi is also a beautiful choice. And then after that, the next size down is the medium. Now this isn't actually a classic flap because it doesn't have the double flap, but it is the same size as the classic flap. And then the smallest size that they do in the classic flap is this one right here, which is the small size. So as I mentioned, the mini is not counted as a classic flap, but it does have the appearance. The classic flaps are available all year round. They should mostly be in stock. You may have to wait a little bit to get the one that you want, but they should generally speaking be available all year round. This is not true of the Chanel minis though. These are seasonal, so they are only released on a seasonal basis, and they are also very popular, so they do tend to sell out very quickly. Because the minis are also seasonal, they are stocked at Heathrow if you are trying to get them at a duty-free price, but be aware that they are popular bags and these are always the first ones to go. Point number 9 is specifically about the double flap versus the single flap. Even though the single flap stopped being in production quite a few years ago, there are still many die-hard fans of the single flap, and you can often track them down on the pre-loved market. So if you're trying to decide which one is right for you, on the pro single flap side, lots of people advocate that it's a much lighter bag because it doesn't have the presence of the double flap, and also capacity is a lot better. So you will be able to fit in a lot more because of the absence of the double flap, which does surprisingly actually limit what you can put in here quite a bit because you lose that extra little bit of height. That said, I am in the double flap camp all the way, even though it does make the bag a bit heavier. Personally, I don't find the jumbo a heavy bag for me. Some people do, but I find the weight absolutely fine. And I love the fact that the double flap really helps to maintain the shape of the bag over time. So I can show you what can happen. With this bag, it doesn't have double flap, and as you can see, the bag is much more pointy right at the tip, and that can sometimes happen if you don't have a double flap. So I would always much rather go for that little bit of extra weight and that little bit less space in order to preserve the shape of the bag, so you do have that much nicer kind of rounded flap at the top. So depends what your priorities are. If you do find the jumbo too heavy, then it may well be worth tracking down a single flap. If you don't mind the weight and you just want it to look as pristine as possible for as long as possible, then the double flap is a great choice. And the 10th thing to know is that Chanel is a very, very solid investment in terms of handbags. So there's obviously other contenders like Hermes and LV, but in terms of the most searched for brand on resale websites, it is usually Chanel, and I've been told that by a few different stores. It is the most popular, looked for brand. Everyone seems to love Chanel, and because of that, the resale value is very strong. Coupled with that is the fact that Chanel pretty much never changes the design, or not very drastically anyway. And they also introduce very regular, very notorious price hikes, which obviously keeps demand high and also keeps the pre-loved market thriving as well. So if you are debating whether to spend a small fortune on a Chanel bag, and they do cost a lot of money now, then you can at least be somewhat comforted by the fact that if you did want to resell it in a couple of years' time, then you will almost certainly make your money back if you go for a classic flap, and you may even make a little bit of money as well. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about Chanel bags in general, then leave them for me down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.